just carried on doing this stuff. And I crashed. I had a lot of crashes. I mean, I crashed into a mountain. I ran out of fuel at night, in the middle of the night. These are, and I thought I was going to die.
Where runways don't exist, the life of a bush pilot. From the African wilderness to American skies, today we are here to share the extraordinary story of CC Pocock. Welcome to the Versfeld Hugo Immigration Podcast, where we bring you real stories, real journeys, and real insight into navigating the U.S. immigration system. Just a quick note before we begin, every case is different, and while we will be sharing some experiences today, this isn't legal advice. It's meant to just educate, encourage, and give you a window into what the process can look like. Our guest today has kindly agreed to share his story with full permission, and we are grateful for his willingness to help others who may be walking a similar path. If you're navigating your own situation, it is always recommended that you get advice for your specific situation. Most importantly, the choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not solely be based upon advertisement. So in this episode, we are sitting down with my friend Milne CC Pocock, the legendary South African bush pilot and founder of Bush Air. CC shares his thrilling journey from the rugged terrains of Africa to building a new life in the United States, and we'll dive into his early days in aviation, groundbreaking achievements in bush and mountain flying terrain, and then the challenges that led to his immigration. Perfect for aviation enthusiasts, aspiring pilots, and anyone inspired by story of resilience and adventure. This is the story of CC Pocock. So, CC, thank you again so much for joining us. I guess the first question that most people would ask, what is a bush pilot?
What is a bush pilot?
That's right.
Okay. Well, a bush pilot is someone who is a highly skilled pilot, first of all. A bush pilot, the skills to be a bush pilot. You need to be a jack of all trades. Being able to survive out in the middle of nowhere, take care of anything that may come your way, and a very self-reliant, resourceful, adventurous person who possesses exceptional skills, like I say, to fly, operate an aircraft in remote and undeveloped areas of the world, and places where there are no runways.
Because this is somebody who don't land where there's runways. This is a pilot, first of all, the word pilot.
Yeah.
Not necessarily somebody who lands in the bush, but kind of it implies that there's no runways. There may not be someone in a tower that says, all right, you're clear to land in runway number 5. There may not even be a runway. There are elements that plays a role that the ordinary pilot don't always encounter. Would you say that's kind of an accurate depiction of kind of what a bush pilot is?
Yeah, I mean, out here in the U.S., we call it backcountry flying, the same as bush flying. Bush flying is a little bit more. Backcountry flying is basically, out in the backcountry of the United States and so forth, and other places around the world. But bush flying is more when you're operating off airport. There's no airport. You're landing out, you're just looking for places between the bushes and in the desert, or roads or trails to land on, stuff like that. That's what we typically refer to as bush flying.
Bush flying. Now, tell me, CC, for these the folks who are listening, how did you get into bush flying? You were a pilot. And then how did it evolve from being a pilot, into then eventually becoming a bush pilot?
I think from an early age, from when I was a child, I remember from a young child, I've always been fascinated with flying. But I've always been, from around that age, I already knew what I wanted to do with regards to aviation. I mean, I've done lots of things in my life, but Aviation only happened late in my life because there was no money. One day I was able to afford to take flying lessons. But from that early age, I've always been drawn to be a bush pilot for some other reason. I can't explain it. I don't know where it all started, but that's how it started. So first I wanted to learn to fly, and then I virtually not even had my private pilot's license yet, and I was already out there in, the backcountry of Southern Africa, for instance. And one thing led to another, and finally one day I started giving training, and here I am, so many years later.
So what was the first plane that you bought? Was it a little Cessna, or what kind of plane was it?
It was the very first. I had ultralights, and then I had Cessna 150, 172. In fact, I still got an airplane. I still own an airplane from those days. I still got one of my airplanes. I've got 4 of them, and one of them is still I've had for so many years. 30 years almost, or whatever. Yeah, Cessna 172, and I still have it.
So your fascination with aviation is just to get up in the sky. Was there necessity with regards to you wanting to maybe go to certain places, getting there quicker? Was there any other reasoning behind the enthusiasm about flying that kind of got you into flying and then subsequent bush flying?
I think as we recently discussed, I've always been fascinated with flying. I always wanted to fly since I was a kid. And finally one day I got the opportunity to take flying lessons. And then I made up for lost time. I made up for lost time. And just started flying out in, Southern Africa. And then eventually started doing, actually I came to the US in 1989, around about 1990, I got my American commercial license. I had licenses from other Southern African countries like Swaziland at the time and Zambia and places like that, and commercial. And, I did some commercial flying as well, bush flying.
So this is where you would take some guys who come to Africa, hop on a plane with you. How many? 6, 10?
Yeah, sometimes, we'd fly almost 20.
20. So you would go... And you would go take them to some remote parts of Africa where they would either go hunting or they would go sightseeing.
Like exactly.
And you'll fly them over here where, other airplanes don't fly to.
Right.
So then, fantastic. And so obviously this has evolved into, a business. There's obviously also some training that was involved. I mean, you obviously evolved and you were a quick learner because there's a lot of people who came, and you started a flight school subsequently, didn't you?
Yeah. So not just a regular flight school. This is where what I do is completely unique to most others. I only give advanced flight training to existing pilots. I teach backcountry flying, mountain flying, what we call tail wheel flying, bush plane flying, stuff like that. I do a lot of tail wheel training. Which is, typical bush planes with a tail wheel on the back, conventional gear. And so what I do is I take pilots, it doesn't matter how bad they are or how good they are, and I'll make them better, I'll make them safer. And I
love it.
I give them training in order to lessen the risk of them having a fatal accident. And that's part of my mission and my goal. When I started off, I'm self-taught, and because of I had many accidents. I had many accidents in the past. This is many years ago, before I even started giving this training, and accidents where I'm amazed today that I'm still alive, and so I do believe that through those experiences, those absolutely horrific accidents that I've had, that I was spared by God for a reason. And that reason was to help pilots not make the same mistakes that I made. And that's what I feel that I'm busy with. That's my mission in life. That's what I'm doing, and I'm still on that mission, and will stay on that mission for as long as I need to be on that mission.
And that's quite extraordinary. I mean, what a story. There's not a lot of people who survive, especially small plane crashes. From any statistic would show you. And what a remarkable testimony. God has saved you, so that
Yes.
there's some guys who make a mistake just once, and then that's that. You've been fortunate enough to be blessed enough to have made some mistakes, so that you can teach some of those guys, don't make that mistake. Because the guys who make those mistakes in the past, they are not here to tell us about that.
That's right.
That's quite extraordinary. But speaking of extraordinary, obviously your coaching and your teaching has reached quite an extraordinary level as well, to the point where the Discovery Channel, from the US, actually interviewed you, went to South Africa, and tell us a little bit about that experience with the Discovery Channel.
That was, I'm very grateful for that. I didn't do that well on Discovery. A lot of shows don't. I just think the producers messed that one up. But I'm very grateful for that, and I think that helped. That helped us, obviously, with my application for my green card application. I think that just happened, and it's amazing how that happened. That just happened at the critical time, which I needed it most. We needed that. We needed that, and that was a big boost. And it was like, I think that was another one of those blessings. Well, okay, we need to do this. And that was given to me. That was, that's what I can say about that.
But it also brought some exposure to the Americans, those who do watch the Discovery Channel, to get a little bit of an insight of what is a bush pilot. And it also, there's quite a lot of Americans that specifically came to South Africa to be taught by you.
Look, I mean, I didn't invent bush flying, and let's face it. I think the actual hardcore bush flying really originated in Alaska, which obviously is part of the U.S.
Sure.
Alaska and Canada, and then places like Africa, not so much, the outback of Australia and parts of South America. But yeah, I did start something unique in South Africa, but it only went so far because I had so many problems. I had so many problems trying to develop, this kind of training down there. The authorities were against it all the way,
Yeah, so tell us about some encounters that you've had with the authorities, where you were forced to put, set the plane down somewhere.
Oh, well, I've had to do that a few times.
Yes, of course.
I've had a few emergency. I have had many. Back in the day, like I said, I've had some really, really serious aircraft accidents, which I've had. I'm totally blessed to have been the grace of God that I'm still alive, for a purpose. But I've had emergency landings. A lot of that happened all down in Southern Africa and South Africa, landing on roads in between the traffic and stuff like that. And I've done it all. And some of it's on video, some of it's on photographs, and it hasn't been. I haven't put it out there for people to see. It's coming. It's coming. But so I think, what was the question again?
No, I was just curious about, some of your encounters with the authorities. Did you ever get into a situation where you got written a traffic citation for landing your plane? You were just mentioning something about landing in among traffic in some remote parts of South Africa.
Well, I know my South African pilot's license was suspended many times. I may even hold the record to this day. I may even hold the record in South Africa for the pilot that had his license suspended and revoked so many times. And I'm laughing about it because I no longer have a South African license. I've tore it up like I did with my passport. But anyway, I've been through the ringer down there. the Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa and me, we were never friends, never friends.
And a lot of it has to do, obviously, with the dangerous predicament of the environment of the bush pilot, right? I mean, tell us maybe what was the most dangerous place that you've ever put a plane down or, landed?
By choice or emergency?
Well, let's say by choice, and then we'll go by emergency.
I've landed I've landed out in the bush in South Africa between wild animals like elephants and stuff like that, where, you're not supposed to do those things, but I've done that because somebody has paid me to do it. I've got a passenger who's come all the way from the UK or the US, and they say, "Well, I'm paying you. I want you to land this airplane right next to that herd of elephant. I want to take pictures of them." And well, you're not supposed to be doing that in some African country because you'll get arrested. But anyway, I've done stuff like that because that's the real deal kind of bush flying. Yeah. Out here in the U.S., just by choice. I've landed in some challenging places, like on mountaintops and stuff like that, where, if something happens, they're not going to get you off the mountain in a hurry. There's no roads, to get up there to help you. There's huge risk involved there. I've flown.
Landing on a mountain. The crosswinds, the rocks. There's no real nice place to put a plane down on top of a mountain.
Yeah, you have to be very alert. At the risk, you have to be very aware of the risk and how to manage that and really be sure of yourself and your aircraft. There's no room for error in that kind of environment. I don't do too much of the stuff anymore. Nowadays it's purely training. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. I help, make people safer so that when they are in that environment that they have the skills to be able to do it safely and lessen the chance of ever having a really bad accident.
And that's the kind of training that you provide. Putting pilots into a situation where the best way to train is if you're in that situation, kind of in a safe, dangerous environment, if there's something like that, in order to show, hey, listen, this is how you, what you need to do in that environment. Right. Is that correct?
Right. I create scenarios here at my home base where we practice these sort of things until they become proficient in the techniques and procedures required. And then we head out into the real backcountry, which is not far from where I am. We're fortunate in this part of the world, west of the Rockies, where we have a lot of public lands called, Bureau of Land Management land, where we can go out and land out there and, in the mountains and in the desert and do these things. Lots of freedoms here we have in the U.S. that do not exist in places like any African country, for that matter. We're very fortunate to have the freedoms here in this country to be able to still experience and enjoy true backcountry flying.
And it makes just those pilots better pilots because, the uncertainty of things that happens up in the air. If you have a pilot who has this kind of training that you're talking about, feel more comfortable with regards to the fact that they can be able to, they are trained on how to get out of, dangerous situations and make it safe again. Yes.
So the training I give, although it's mostly backcountry flight training, the techniques and procedures that I teach is applicable to all forms of flying. It doesn't matter. I have a lot of airline pilots come to me. I have captains, first officers. I have a lot of airline pilots come to me for training. And they also, when they're not flying a Boeing or an Airbus, they're flying their Piper Cub or their Cessna or whatever on the weekends, and so they come to me for that training. But at the same time, that what we train here in a small airplane, the techniques and procedures still apply to a large airliner if you had an issue and have to start thinking out of the box and hands-on flying. So, one example is the Hudson River landing where Sully Sullenberger put the airplane down the river. It might not have turned out that good if it was somebody else who was not a glider pilot. Think about that.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting in the back of an airliner, I'm always like, who's up there in the left seat? Mm-hmm. What happens if can that person? What is this crew going to be able to handle the situation? And that's what it's all about. It's like really at any form, anything in life. You need to be prepared for when things go wrong. It's easy when things go right. Anybody can fly an airplane. Anybody can learn to fly an airplane. Get in, take off, fly, land, go. Easy. Really it is. Like driving a car at the end of the day. But when things go wrong, that's when you need to be able to handle that situation. If you don't practice handling these situations, you're not going to be able to handle the situation. And this is what this is about. This is what I do, is I prepare people to handle the situations.
So, and tell me then, CC, that's very good insight. Oftentimes, you get on an airliner and you say the guy in the left seat. I don't think a lot of people even know that the captain sits on the left, left or right.
Yeah, that's right.
Number one. And number two, so now, it's going to make me pause when I look into the cockpit. I know who the captain is and who the first officer is. But yeah, I mean, the Hudson River, what a great example. And on how specifically things can go wrong really, really quick. And does that pilot, has he gone through some training, which most of them have gone through some good training, to deal with emergency situations. But what happens if we had a guy who went to CC to do some bush pilot training and you flying over the Rockies and stuff goes horribly wrong? I would feel more comfortable knowing that the guy had some bush pilot training, to make sure that we land safely.
Besides that, there's been many others. I mean, there was an airline, I forgot the guy's name, he's in Mexico, Salvador. They had dual engine failure after takeoff, and they landed on a grass levee down in the south. I forget the whole story, but they landed, this whole airliner landed on the grass next to this levee down in one of the southern states, and everybody just got out, and they amazing story. So these things, and of course there was the Canadian the DC-10 that ran out of gas because of an issue, and they glided down. They landed on an old runway where they're using for a drag strip. So these miracles do happen. They do happen, and the funny thing is that most of these pilots that pulled these miraculous emergency landings off, well, all had some skill in general aviation, light aircraft flying. So, I think that's where the advantage comes in, knowing how to fly a light aircraft, being current or proficient on flying light aircraft on the weekends and so forth. Yep.
That's great. So if you were to take that, so there is the element with regards to obviously, honing in your skills and making it safe for you, your passengers and everything else. And then there's some people who obviously chase the adventure. What advice would you give to any pilot, young pilot, chasing an adventure? Like bush pilot.
Yeah. So somebody who wants to get into bush flying.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a lot of young people out there learning to fly, or just got their private pilot license. That's what they want to do. First and foremost, I need people to pay attention to this, because this is where I went wrong. That's what I wanted to do from an early age. I wanted to be a bush pilot, fly in the bush. And what happened is no one taught me. I just went out there and started learning the hard way, doing these, like landing an airplane down there where I'm not supposed to be landing an airplane. I wasn't even a private pilot yet. I was a student pilot. I was going out solo to do my solo flying training by myself, exercises. And nobody was looking. Nobody knew where I was. And I was landing in farm fields and farm roads with a flight school airplane. If they'd known about that, oh boy, I would have been kicked out of there. That's where I started. I wasn't even a pilot yet, and I was already landing my airplane down there where I shouldn't have been doing it. And because of that, then I got my pilot's license, and I went out and I just carried on doing this stuff. And I crashed. I had a lot of crashes. I mean, I crashed into a mountain. I ran out of fuel at night, in the middle of the night. These are, and I thought I was going to die on a couple of occasions. I thought before hitting the ground, before landing, before crashing, I thought, okay, this is it. And I survived. Anyway, we spoke about that earlier. But you're asking me what advice I should give to aspiring bush pilots. Okay. First and foremost, get professional training and mentoring from an experienced expert in the field, not just any instructor who claims to know everything. And there's too many flight instructors out there who think they know it all and they don't. Like myself, unlike myself, and as I say, I learned everything the very hard way by trial and error. And again, I will say, I believe it was through the grace of God that I miraculously survived some of those very serious accidents and emergency situations that could have easily, and I'll even go as far as say, they were probably meant to be fatal. How I survived some of these accidents to this day, I can't even think about it because it's beyond my imagination. All I know is that my guardian angels were there those days, and I've survived far too many. You survive one, that's okay. Two, I've survived more than I can even talk about. Not just airplanes, cars too. So my message there is very clear. If possible, get mentoring, not necessarily a flight instructor. Get mentoring from somebody who truly is an expert, has real life experience in this kind of flying. Come to me, I'll be happy to help. Because not everybody is going to be as lucky as I was, and by trial and error. You make a mistake, that may be the last mistake you make. Bush flying or off airport flying in remote parts of the world, in inhospitable areas, there's very little room for error. It's easy to make a mistake, and that mistake could be fatal. That's my advice.
So what kind of person becomes a bush pilot? It's like,
well, people say crazy people. No, definitely not. Crazy people don't become bush pilots because crazy people wouldn't last long. You know.
That's right.
All right. That's a good thing. You just crazy people. Yeah, that's exactly what the Civil Aviation Authority in South Africa thought. I was crazy, so they sent me to 3 psychologists to make sure that I wasn't crazy. That's a fact. That's a fact. They pulled my license. Many times, but the one time they pulled my license, they didn't want to give it back to me because I thought, no, I'm crazy. I can't have I'm crazy. I can't have a license to fly an airplane. So they sent me to. They sent me to 3 psychologists.
Wow.
One psychiatrist, 2 psychologists, whatever, to be sure that this guy's not crazy. Well, I'm not crazy, and I passed that with flying colors. So they gave my license back. Anyway, yeah. What kind of person becomes a bush pilot? But you already asked me that earlier.
Yeah.
Is that the question again?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of find out, what kind of guy does become a bush pilot? And
well, first of all, you have to be. You look. Not everybody can do this. If you're not able to, you need to be able to be skilled in many, many, many different things. Not just flying an airplane. Survival. You need to know something about survival. Because if something happens to you out in the middle of nowhere, who's going to take care of you? You're not going to call 911. It's not going to. Well, you could, but it's going to take a while for somebody to get to you. So when you're operating in that type of environment, you need to be very resourceful, very self-reliant, skillful. It's not everybody can do this, and those that aren't really suited, they want to do it, but they don't have the necessary skills to be able to do that. This kind of flying safely, don't last long, and unfortunately, some of them kill themselves. Unfortunately, yeah.
Well, CC, at some point you decided to leave South Africa, and you've been to America. You see what they're doing over here. So my first question is, why the move? Why did you decide to leave South Africa?
This is a good question. Very good question. I could talk about this for many, many hours.
We've got time.
But yeah, okay. I'll try and make it short. I think, again, I'm a unique case. I'm not your average, ex-South. I'm not a South African anymore. So I renounced my citizenship. Not many people do that. But when I took the oath,
you're now an American citizen.
I'm an American citizen by naturalization for a few years now. I'm very proud, very, very, very proud to be an American citizen, long overdue. But I took an oath of allegiance to this country, and that means that I owe allegiance only to this country. And so, therefore, I decided to renounce my South African citizenship. But anyway, getting to the beginning of it, from the very beginning of my childhood, as far back as I can remember, I think around about the age 9, 10, very clearly remember 9, 10, I fully realized already at that time where I should be. I knew I needed to be in this country because, I'd really had exposure to life in the US and what people do here and so forth, and, magazines and stuff, even from that age. But one very important thing happened in my life at that time in 1999. Now, yesterday NASA went to the moon. 57 years ago, Apollo 11 landed on the moon. And 57 years ago, 1999, I was 10 years old. And that was the turning point already in my young life. That's when I realized where I should be, and I'm in the wrong country. Because at that time, aviation was probably in the back of my mind and stuff like that. Many other things were, but at that time, I remember I wanted to be a rocket scientist, I wanted to work for NASA at that age. So I was fast, and we didn't have television in South Africa at that time. So this was all listening on the radio, the first moon landing. I followed as a kid, I followed the Apollo missions, and I used to build the model rockets and stuff, and I had a chemistry set, and I was already into electronics and physics and all that kind of stuff from an early age. So at that time, I knew where I should be, and I felt I was born in the wrong country, and to this day, I still believe I was born in the wrong country. So immigrating to America, it felt like coming home. I'm home permanently. So I never felt at home in South Africa my entire life. Never felt at home in South Africa from that early age. And then regarding aviation, well, when just briefly, when I started, I've done other things before aviation. I've been involved in entertainment and all that all my life. But let's forget about that. We're talking about aviation now because that's where I am now. When I started Bush Air and I started giving, my training in South Africa, and I started participating in air shows and things. And as I said before, the authorities were always against me. People in positions of authority were very vindictive towards me. Fortunately, I had a lot of support. I had a lot of support in the industry. No matter what I did, they were always against me. I started giving this training. Now, as I mentioned before, I had many serious aircraft accidents in my life, and I again blessed, grace of God, I'm alive. And I started Bush Air, and then I started giving training to pilots so that they don't make the same mistakes I made, and that they, and this was a good thing. No one else had ever done it before. Exactly what I was doing. And the authorities in South Africa didn't see it that way because I didn't conform with what they wanted me to conform to, the standard syllabus or whatever of flight training. It just never worked. And I could never, and it just got to a point where I knew all this time that where I needed to be, and the time never, the time was never right. It just never. Finally, the time came, and now we're getting close to the time right now where I just one day had enough. I just had enough of them always. It was fighting a brick wall. I knew that everything I wanted to do and achieve in my life was completely I couldn't do it in South Africa. I just couldn't do it. Their mindset, it's just, I just couldn't do it. They wouldn't allow me to do it. So I knew there was only one country in the world, and that was the USA, where I could do what I wanted to do, where I could achieve what I wanted to achieve.
And you also had the exposure of a lot of these American pilots who would come to South Africa to your school, right?
Yes, I had people from all over the world come to me for training, from the US, from the UK, from Europe, a lot from and obviously a lot from local.
So interesting, well. You draw the contradiction there because you have a government agency that is there for the safety of the industry, and then you have someone like yourself which the industry actually needs, who pushes that envelope maybe a little bit, because there are environments that a pilot finds themselves in where nobody's going to predict it, and no industry is going to regulate what happens in a situation, fill in the blank there, and this is what you should do. And so these two are constantly fighting against one another, and where the ultimate guy who wins is the government. So that's probably why your license were revoked and whatever the case may be. But it's fascinating that you say that the industry, that the pilots and everybody else from the industry was actually supporting you, because they realize the importance and the value, that you bring to the industry in order to make sure that they are safe and that their passengers are safe.
That's right. As much as they tried to put me down and close me down, everybody in the country in aviation knew what was going on. The magazines, the aviation magazines, were covering the story, and they were on my side, and the airline and the Aircraft Owners Association in South Africa was on my side. People were still coming to me. They knew about it. They knew they were still coming to me for training. So and then I applied to. Well, I was still in South Africa, and I applied to the FAA, the Federal Aviation.
This is the American regulated
That's
agency.
right. I applied. Yeah. I said, "This is the training I give. I would like to have you accredit this training,
endorse it. Yes,
endorse like it for there's a special program here in the US called the Wings program, and I did a course with them. I did an online course with the FAA, and they accredited my training. And I went to the South African authorities and I said, "You people are trying to shut me down. You're against me. The FAA have disaccredited my courses that I have to offer, and you refuse to do that. You think you're better than them? I don't think so." This is when I decided. This is when the process started. When we're talking about the immigration process, this is when I said, "Okay, I've had enough. I don't want to be in this country anymore. My hands are tied. I cannot grow. I cannot achieve what I want to achieve." Many people have left countries in the world because of this, and South Africa. Elon Musk is an example. To imagine him trying to do what he's doing here in South Africa would never have worked. Okay, so he's just on a grander scale. So one day I said, okay, I've had enough. I'll leave. I will offer my expertise and skills to a country who would appreciate me and value what I have to offer. And I knew already which country that would be. I never really wanted to be in South Africa. That's when I looked you up, and we offered my skills and expertise to the United States of America, in short. And what did America say? Well, we value your skills and expertise. Welcome to America. Here's your green card. And now, years later, here I am, a very, very, very proud American citizen. And I just want to say this, that the U.S. is the land of opportunity.
No, for sure. I remember when we first had a discussion, and I said, all right, well, CC, we have this visa option that we can do because of your extraordinary ability. We talked a little bit about some visa options, how we can bring you over on some visa options. Then we talked about green card options. And I remember telling you, I said, man, the green card option is going to be risky because there's a lot of money involved. And, at the end of the day, it's a one-stop shop. But we talked about the visa options, and it's almost like landing a plane with, on a runway.
Oh, yeah. As opposed to out in the bush. There's an easy way and there's a hard way. I remember that very clearly. I did a lot of research online about the different ways, the different green cards and so forth. And there's only one I wanted. And I wanted to move my business and me to the U.S. and continue what I'm doing and grow. And that would mean that I would have to be self-sponsored. Is that the correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay,
So we talked about the O visa. It's for extraordinary people in business, in their specific field, whether or not it's business, science, or athletics, or of course the gold standard. And this is the EB1A. This is the extraordinary green card that is self-sponsored by people with extraordinary abilities in their field. And so we were talking a little bit before we got started on some of the analogies we use. Is like, all right, we're going to land this immigration case on top of a mountain. There's no runways up there. We need to make sure that we, at least before we set this case down, that we line everything up. Number one, we're going to have a platform from where we're going to do it. And, we have some guidance as far as what the criteria is. Let's just make sure as we do our check before we come in for landing that we meet all of the criteria, how we can support all of those criteria relating to, each aspect. Yes, the fact that you were featured on the Discovery Channel obviously had contributed quite greatly. And then obviously once we do make that landing, we want to make sure that we define what it is that you have extraordinary ability in. Bush pilot. So we talked a little bit about what is a bush pilot. We don't assume that the immigration officer who's going to review your case understand what a bush pilot is. So we went into some good deep lengths as far as explaining, all right, this is what bush pilots are. Here is CC, member of here's the pilots. Here's very more defined. Here's bush pilots. And how does CC then raise to the very top of his endeavor as a bush pilot? And, so I tell people when we do these EB1As for even soccer players, for instance, you're an extraordinary soccer player, but more importantly, you're an extraordinary midfielder. Let's go define what a midfielder is, and then compare you to other midfielders. Let's go define what a bush pilot is, and let's go compare you to other bush pilots, and so on and so forth. And so I remember, us having this discussion and trying to find some information about some of the awards that you've won, some of the publications, some of the publications were good. Some of the publications were not so good. but at the end of the day, how long? I can't remember. CC, how long did it take us to get you a green card?
I remember very, very clearly. So obviously, I said to you, look, I want to get this. The goal was to become a U.S. citizen the fastest way I could, and this was the fastest way because that was. And I know you kind of like were putting me off, saying, "Well, this EB1 is there's a chance you could be rejected, and then we have to." And I remember saying, "No, I don't care what it takes. This is what I want. This is the way I want to go." And anyway, so yeah, and you built up a very good case. We had, I think the requirement was like there's 7 requirements, and we had to meet like 3 or 4 of them or something.
That's right.
I thought, how are we ever going to do this? And you did. And the stress, the anxiety that I had at that time. Oh, man. Okay, I'll just let you know. The anxiety was there. There.
Probably not quite the same anxiety of landing a plane on top of a mountain, but sorry, continue.
I don't know. I think that was probably in my life, one of the most anxious moments of my life. Knowing that this is what I want this so bad that no matter what, I want this. And so we submitted it, and I paid the extra $1,000-something to the USCIS for expediting the reply. Remember, they had to reply in 6 weeks.
Yes.
Is that still like that? I think it's like that.
Yeah, 15 days. Yeah,
15 days. And we submitted, and now I'm sitting 6 weeks, and I'm worried. And I remember on the 6th week, exactly like a day on the 6th week, you emailed me and said, I've just had a reply. We have an issue. My heart just went right through the other end of my body. And you said, no, don't worry. It was just I'll take care of it. It was something to do with media. I remember that very clearly. They had a question regarding the media side of because media is one of the 7 requirements or something. And you said, no problem. You'll take care of it. And I don't know what happened. And you said, okay, we're taking care of it. They have to reply now in another week, I think. So it was a total of 7 weeks. In 7 weeks, they approved it. And people say to me, when I tell them the story, I sit here all the time telling me, people ask me about my journey. And I say it was 7 weeks. And I say, that's amazing. That's amazing. 7 weeks? You've got to, that's the initial approval. It took another year before the green card actually happened. But it was amazing. So it was meant to be. It was meant to be. Everything just happened. Although I wanted this to happen very early in my life. I wanted to do this. And I tried, back in the 90s as well, to do this. And I messed all that up. The time wasn't right. So, better late than never. Better late than never.
Yeah.
The timing just happened to be right at the time it was.
So tell me, I can't remember. Remind me again. How did you end up finding us? I mean, you're all the way in South Africa, looking for an immigration lawyer, I assume, to kind of help you navigate through this process. How did you end up finding us?
Well, for many years, I've been traveling to and from the U.S. every year. And I'd been, giving some training and coaching here and doing a lot of seminars here every year at Oshkosh, which is the largest aviation gathering in the world. I wasn't new to the U.S. I had first come over to the U.S. back in 1989, tried to make it permanent in 1990, and then I missed all that and I went back. So I'm kind of like being between South Africa and the U.S. many, many times over the years, and regarded the U.S. as my future home anyway. So I was really pretty well, in with the U.S. Way of living here and so forth, and knew that I would just, when the time is right, it would all happen. So I went searching. I just went online, and it came down to only two of you. There was one person in, I think, California somewhere. And I can say why, but I chose you.
Well, great.
You're the guy.
I remember us having a consultation. You told me about what you're doing, and I'm like, man, hold on a second. This guy is crazy. He's like landing his planes everywhere. And I realized that from these stories, the more we got talking about your background, I saw an opportunity here where I think, again, coming in defining what it is that you do and why it is so extraordinary. I feel like, we've got this little pigeonhole here with immigration where we can most definitely fit that in and, meet your objective. But, I'm glad that we're able to, get connected. I'm glad that everything kind of worked out very well because, we've, on and off over the years, still kept in touch. And I'm so glad to see how you have flourished, how your American dream has just come alive the moment you literally landed here in the US.
Yep. I remember that day. I remember everything, the whole process very, very clearly, actually, including the actual move, the big move when I left. Yeah. That was a big deal.
Was that a hard thing for you to do, to leave South Africa?
No.
No.
That was one of the happiest days of my life. Because
have you been back?
I always wanted to. So I was well prepared. I was ready. It was the best time of my life. After everything I had been experiencing with authorities in South Africa and so forth. It was the easiest and most satisfying. Find all the right words. Most rewarding, exciting, happiest experience of my life. And it just got better from there. And it ultimately, the cherry on the cake was the day I became a U.S. citizen. So it started that day. That was, I'll never regret that day. It was the best move I ever made in my life. Thanks
so it takes about 5. Thank you. It takes 5 years after you get your green card, and then right before that you're eligible to apply for naturalization. Right. Obviously, you need to be a good boy and keep your nose clean. And did you struggle through some of the test questions?
No. I studied that. I was determined.
Yeah,
I studied that. I studied everything.
That was kind of the easier part of the whole immigration process, right?
It
Navigating
was, it
through the
was.
last
Yeah.
part.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
some of the stressful parts of that, once, I think every hurdle, as you get through each hurdle, and there's quite a few along the way, it's not just like here's your green card and there you go. There are some hurdles, and some of them are, although just because it's been approved in the beginning, that 6-7 week period, doesn't mean that you're not going to fail the medical exam. You're not going to fail the Interpol FBI background check. There's another one. Ooh, I tell you what, is that they're thinking, ooh, is there something I've missed here on the questionnaire? Is there something? My advice to anybody out there doing this, very clearly, very important. I think you're going to agree with me 100% here. Don't ever lie or hide anything from the U.S. immigration.
So 100% agree.
Those questions that are asked in the forms, you better be 100%. And hey, listen, I had problems in the U.S. I'd been. I was arrested in the U.S. back in the 90s for careless and reckless operation of an aircraft in Florida. The case was dismissed. I had immigration problems, as you know. Back in the day, at one time I was also an illegal alien at one time, and my visa expired. As small as that may sound, still it happened, And I thought that would be a problem. I thought that would be a problem, and no, it was not a problem because I disclosed it. I admitted it, and I made. When I went for my interview, way before I even applied for the immigration, the green card. I mean, I went to the consulate and I said to them, look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. I apologize. I won't make that mistake again. It was a mistake. I admitted it, and then with them when we filed, I had to tell you everything. Don't of course hide anything from your immigration attorney, which I didn't do. Right. I told you everything, and we disclosed all of that to immigration because they know. Don't hide it from them. And just because you've had everybody has problems in their life in their past, but you move past that and you learn from that, and that doesn't mean to say that it's going to be held against you. And and I think I'm a good example of that. You're younger, you make mistakes. You make stupid mistakes in life.
For sure, yeah. That's very good information and good advice. CC, we have so many times we have found people where they go to the consulate after we're successful, and the consulate says, "Hey, what about this arrest? You were caught shoplifting 35 years ago." And they're like, "Well, that was expunged." And then I tell the client, "Well, why did you never tell me that?" "Well, because it's expunged." All right. Well, the question that immigration has on the form, have you ever been arrested? It doesn't ask, have you ever been arrested and was it expunged? No, right. The question is, have you been arrested? And so the answer, whether or not your case was expunged or not, or nobody knows about it, the answer is always yes. So then we take it step for step. All right, what were you arrested for? What was the disposition of that case? And so on and so forth. I mean, something as small as stealing, petty theft, could make you inadmissible to the United States and removable from the United States. And I oftentimes tell people, it is best to tell your lawyer everything because we know what the exceptions to the rules are and also what is going to prevent you from coming into the United States, even something as small as a petty theft. There's some exceptions to that and some waivers that one can file. Number one. Number two, if you lie to someone, it could be lying about something that's so inconsequential.
That's another offense.
That the issue was what you should have just said, yes, I did it, is inconsequential. But the fact that you lied about it or hid it now makes it consequential by hiding something that's a material fact to the outcome of you. And now you are being penalized for lying. So I tell people, I said, listen, that's why it's important to have a good immigration lawyer, because we can at least help guide you through it. Not to say you need to lie or not lie, but to at least let you know what the ramifications is of what has happened, so that we can figure out and make sure we don't get ourselves to the end of the line, everybody's happy, and then you don't get to come in because the consulate find out about that petty theft offense that you have. And not all criminal charges makes you inadmissible to the United States. But there are some that do. And it's only an immigration lawyer that can help advise you and your criminal lawyer on what those matters are. So it's a very valid point that you bring up, because we find it unfortunately way too often that people either lie about things that are on that forms, and it becomes more of an issue than if they had just been truthful to obviously us as well as immigration.
If you lie about something, then the authorities are going to think, well, what else have you lied about?
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly.
It snowballs. I guess it just gets worse. But
yeah.
So that's my advice. It's like, no matter what's happened in the past, disclose everything. Be honest.
Yeah.
I think that.
Well, this has been great, CC. Let me maybe finish off with a question. If you were to had, this is maybe a little bit of a deep question, so take some time to think about it if you want.
Okay.
If you had one last flight anywhere in the world, where would that be?
One last flight anywhere in the world. Well, it just so happens at this time I'm in the process of trying to retire or semi-retire. So it kind of like fits in with that, I guess. I would say nowhere in particular. Nowhere in particular. Right here, my home base. Keeping in mind that maybe I'm retiring and I'm going to be flying with the very last pilot. This is the last pilot I'm going to be giving training to. So it doesn't matter where in the world this is. The point is, what's important to me here at this stage in my life, it's really, really important to me, as I've made it very, very clear multiple times in this interview, knowing what my purpose is in life, and that is to help people become safer and to help save lives. So knowing that flying with that last flight, that last pilot, giving training for the last time, is that I have helped in some way to prevent another fatal accident and save another life, physically. And here's the thing, not just physically, but spiritually. So I'd like to end off with giving everybody that's watching this just one thing to think about. That if you living a life on the edge, like bush flying is, flying in the backcountry, think about this. Once your human body is dead, it's too late to change your mind. That's it.
That's true. Well, CC, thank you so much. What a remarkable story.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Today we heard about far more than just aviation here. We heard about courage, we heard about judgment, resilience, and the willingness to begin again and again and making a new life here in the United States. From the landscapes of Africa to a new chapter here in the United States. CC, your story is a reminder that skill matters, but character is what carries a person through change. So thank you again so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you are considering or at the start of your immigration process, we encourage you to connect with us at versfeldimmigration.com. Your immigration journey starts here.